Welcome to the part 18 of the Pitman Shorthand course. In this video, we are going to talk about circle or loop preceding initial hook. So it has two parts. First one is S before straight strokes hooked for R, and second one is S before other hooked strokes or curves. So let's start with first part. Alright, so we have a statement here. So let's read the statement. Initial S, SW or ST preceding a stroke hooked for R is expressed by writing the circle or loop on the same side as the R hook. Now what does this mean? This simply means that whenever we have to represent S, SW or ST initially before a stroke that has the R hook, then in that case we write the circle or loop on the same side as the R hook. Now to understand this, we'll be taking some examples. Alright, so first of all, we already know how to write S, SW and ST. S is represented with a small circle, SW is represented with a big circle, and ST is represented with a small loop. Okay, now we need to take an example of a word. So suppose if we have a word called pry. So pry will be made like this. Okay, we have this P stroke, and to represent this R, we simply attached this small hook. So this is our word pry, and here we have the diphthong which represents the sound of I. So here's the pry word. But what if we have another word called spry? Now this word is almost similar. These two words are almost similar, but here now we also have this S. Alright, so what we can do to make this word spry? So as the statement says, we can represent S by making the circle or loop on the same side as the R hook, which means that we can make the circle on this side. Alright, so spry word will be made like this. So see what we did here, we just turned this hook into a circle so that we can get the sound of S, and at the same time we can also get the sound of R. So this word is spry. So let's take another example, like a word called tray. Alright, so tray will be made like this. But what if we have another word called stray? So again, both of these words are similar, almost similar, but now we have this additional S. So we'll do the same thing as we did here. We'll simply convert this hook into a circle. So this stray word will be written like this. Alright, so here we get the sound of S, and at the same time we also get the sound of R. So that's how we do it. So let's take another example, like a word called eater. So eater will be written like this. Alright, but what if we have another word called sweeter? So we'll do the same thing, but now we have this SW this time, not S, because if you pronounce it goes like sweeter. So see, we have the sound of SW here. So we'll do the same thing. We'll just convert this hook into a big circle this time, because we have the sound of SW, and SW is represented with a big circle, not a small circle. Alright, so sweeter will be written like this. Alright, so this time we made the big circle to represent our SW, and this is the word sweeter. Let's take our final example, like the word called utter. So utter will be made like this. Alright, but what if we have another word called stutter? So this time we have this ST now. Alright, and we represent ST with a loop, with a small loop. So we'll do the same thing as we did in the earlier cases. So we'll simply turn this hook, this small hook, into a small loop. So stutter word will be written like this. Alright, okay, so that was all for the first part. Now let's move on to the second part. So we have a statement here, so let's read the statement. In all other cases, S is written inside the initial hook so that both circle and hook are clearly shown. So what does this mean? It's saying that in all other cases, which means in part 1, we had a specific case, a specific condition, which was whenever we had a stroke that has R hook, then if we had to represent S, SW or SD initially to that stroke, then we could simply make the circle or loop on the same side as the R hook. But here it's telling us that leaving that condition, leaving that specific case, except that in all other cases, S is written inside the initial hook so that both circle and hook are clearly shown. And to illustrate this, we'll be taking examples. So let's take a word. Offer. So offer will be written like this. But what if we had the word suffer? So now how we will be making suffer? Now we know that we have this hook here to represent R. So now what we can do to also include this S. Now we cannot make this word like this. This will be wrong because as you can see the statement says S is written inside the initial hook, inside, so that both circle and hook are clearly shown. So we have to make this word in a way so that we can see both circle and the hook. So we can do like this. Now if you see at this part carefully, you can see that we can see the circle also and the hook also. So let's make this bigger so that you can understand this properly. Now you can see that we can easily identify this circle and we can also easily identify this hook. Okay, so in part 1 we had a specific condition, so except that, leaving that condition, in all other cases we'll be doing the same thing. So let's take another word called plies. So plies will be made like this, right? But what if we had the word supplies? So we'll do the same thing as we did here. We'll make the circle inside the hook so that both circle and hook are clearly shown. So supplies word will be written like this. Alright, so that's how we do it. Now why is this important? Why is it important that we have to make the circle inside the hook? Why we cannot simply make like this? Because if we'll do that, we will be only able to identify this S and this stroke only. We cannot see any hook here. So the L part will be missing from here. So that's why we made like this, because here we can see this S also and this L also. So that's why it is important. In all of the cases, we'll make the S inside the hook so that both circle and hook are clearly shown. So let's take another example, like a word called evil. So evil will be written like this. Alright, but what if we had another word called civil? This is V. So again we'll do the same thing. We'll make the circle inside the hook. Civil word will be made like this. Okay, here we can clearly see the S and the hook also, and we already have this V, and this is the E sound, which is the vowel. So this is what this second part is all about. Okay, so we also have 3 points here which we need to look at. So let's start with the first point, where L hook cannot be clearly shown in the middle of a word, the stroke L is written. So what does this mean? It's saying that if we have a word where we cannot represent the L hook clearly in the middle, then in that case, instead of making the hook for L, we can make the stroke for L. And to understand this, we'll be taking an example. So let's take a word, forcible. Okay, so let's focus on this part, force. So force will be written like this. Now we have this bill part, all right? We have to show this bill part, so we cannot make bill like this. This will be wrong, all right? So this is what this statement is telling us. This is the word where we cannot show the L hook clearly, because writing the forcible word like this is wrong. This is not the proper way to write. So the statement is saying, instead of writing this hook, instead of making this L hook, we can make the proper normal L stroke, which is like this. So the forcible word can be written properly like this. Right, so this is the right way of writing it. Let's take another word, musical. So again, we cannot make musical word like this. This is wrong. So you see, again, we cannot represent the L hook properly here, which is in the middle of the word. So instead of making the hook for L, we will simply make the stroke for L. So musical word will be written like this. Alright, so this is what this statement is all about. Now let's proceed to the second statement. When skr or sgr follows t or d, the circle is written with the left motion. So it's saying that if we have a word where we have skr or sgr coming after t or d consonant, then in that case we can make the circle with the left motion. So to understand this, we'll be taking an example. So suppose if we have a word tacker. Now tacker will be made like this. But what if we had the word tasker? Now here we have this skr this time that comes after this t consonant. So this word applies with this condition because we have this skr coming after this t consonant. So here we can make the circle for s with the left motion. So tasker word will be made like this. Alright, so see what we did here. We made this circle with the left motion, with the left rotation. So we can consider this part as S also and R also. So this is the word tasker. Let's take another word. Degree. So degree will be made like this. But what if we had the word disagree? Now here we have this sgr this time that is coming after this d consonant. Right, so this word also applies with this condition because we have this sgr coming after the d consonant. So here also we will be making the circle with the left motion. So disagree word will be made like this. Right, so again we just made this circle with the left motion, the left rotation. So we can consider this part as S also and R also. So this part shows both S and R. So that's all for this point. Let's move on to the third and the last point. When skr occurs after P or B, the hook R may be omitted. So what does this mean? It's saying that if we have a word where we have skr that comes after the consonant B or P, then in that case we can skip making the R hook for that word. So to understand this, let's take an example. Prescribe. Okay, so in this word we have this SKR, and it's coming after this P consonant. So this word applies with this condition. So here we can just skip making the R hook. So this word will be made like this. Okay, now if you see here, we didn't make the R hook here. So if normally we pronounce this word, it goes like prescribe, because this is PR, this is S, and this is K, and this is B. We cannot see any R hook here, but still we will consider this as prescribe, because as this statement says, when SKR occurs after P or B, then we can just omit hook R. So this is exactly what's happening here. We have SKR which is coming after the P consonant. So still we can consider this word as prescribe, because this part, we can consider this part as S also plus R also. Let's take one more example, like a word subscriber. Now here also we have this SKR, and it's coming after this B consonant. So here also we can skip making the R hook. We can leave the R hook. So subscriber word will be made like this. So if you again look at this part, we didn't make the R hook, but still we'll consider this as S and R. So this word will be called as subscriber, because this word applies with this condition. Okay, so that was all for this part, and I'll see you in the next part.